Keir Starmer was, the best approach today was the one he took, which was to sort of drip with sarcasm. It just shows that actually in Prime Minister's questions, humour is often more wounding than actually a full frontal sort of savage attack. Just a gentle humour, the ridicule, the sort of almost contempt, really, that he showed for the Prime Minister was obvious today. And Rishi Sunak, you should have been in there, John. His face, he really was unhappy.
I saw the cutaways,
and the people around him were unhappy.
Paul Waugh has now joined us in the studio. Great to see you, Paul.
Hi, John.
You've had
Sorry
a moment
for
to
the delay.
no problem. You got your breath back, Paul. So what's your thought for the day?
My thought really was today and over the last few days, basically how we've seen Rishi Sunak's sort of scratchy side, and that a lot of people say that he's basically just a bit too thin-skinned to be Prime Minister. And he lost his rag with the Greek Prime Minister for appearing on TV and saying something out of turn. And other people who've met him, see a sort of tetchiness when he's there in person. Certainly journalists have noticed that on various trips with him. He quickly loses his temper and so basically has this attitude to critics as, you don't really understand what I'm trying to do.
Yes.
Now, obviously, all Prime Ministers go through that phase. Tony Blair, you and I, John, will remember, described us all as feral beasts, and we all handed out badges accordingly. But there's something about Sunak that suggests that maybe he's just not cut out for the rough and tumble, and that the tech bro approach isn't really fit for politics.
Well, I'll tell you what. Since we're all clearly on the very same page on this, why don't we just look at it a bit more closely? Look for deeper meaning in all of this, the way that we do. Maybe there isn't deeper meaning, but I sort of think there may be something telling about what we've seen today and yesterday over this bizarre story. I mean, look, when you're in a hole, stop digging. That has always seemed like good advice to me. But today at Question Time in the House, it really seemed as if Rishi Sunak hadn't got the memo. I mean, on immigration policy, on tax and spending, on leadership and the art of looking statesmanlike. The Prime Minister looked to me, and not just me, like a fighter on the ropes. If we're doing boxing analogies, no one could ever confuse Keir Starmer's performance in a verbal scrap with the speed and elegance of the great Muhammad Ali. Today, though, he did look like Ali in his prime, mostly because the Prime Minister just seemed so leaden, jabbing at Starmer on Labour's migration policy, while net migration numbers bust through the roof, and accusing Starmer of being a closet pro-EU Remainer on the basis of him choosing Beethoven's Ninth as a favourite on Classic FM. It's also an EU anthem, if you didn't know that. And then doubling down, as we say, on his decision to cancel a meeting with the Greek Prime Minister because he'd been annoying enough to mention the Elgin Marbles. Well, Starmer mocked him mercilessly, and quite a few Tory MPs joined in the laughter. It all seemed to encapsulate, to me, the mood of them up against it in the House of Commons at Question Time today on migration, on tax and spending, on leadership, all the key issues in this coming election. I mean, Paul and Anna, yesterday I was saying I thought this was it was ridiculous, it was extraordinary, but it would blow over quickly. And then the Prime Minister triples down on it today. And now I'm beginning to wonder if we're going to be talking about this in 5-10 years to come, in that this Parthenon Marbles fiasco of a row may be Rishi Sunak's equivalent of Ed Miliband and his bacon sandwich. Just this image of a leader taking on a task, in that case, a big bacon sandwich, in this case, a row about the marbles, and showing the limitations of his powers to do what he's doing, Paul.
I think that's the problem. It just looks so petty, doesn't it? I mean, and that's why Keir Starmer was, the best approach today was the one he took, which was to sort of drip with sarcasm. It just shows that actually in Prime Minister's questions, humour is often more wounding than actually a full frontal sort of savage attack. Just a gentle humour, the ridicule, the sort of almost contempt, really, that he showed for the Prime Minister was obvious today. And Rishi Sunak, you should have been in there, John. His face, he really was unhappy.
I saw the cutaways.
And the people around him were unhappy. And you got the overall sense of a man defeated, which is not what you want a year out from a general election.
Yeah.
And I think that it was that sense of deflation that struck me more than anything else. Of course, what Starmer did, and his team confirmed it to me afterwards, was I tweeted at the time, this attack line about the man with the reverse Midas touch, that sounds like John Smith against John Major way back in the 90s. Yes. And John Smith had this wonderful attack on John Major, which was all about basically nothing works in Britain. We can't get a Grand Nationals to the start on time. Hotels fall into the sea. That's what we've in the situation of now, that is really Labour's rich mind to seem, really, because it's all about this idea that Britain is broken and that Sunak's not doing anything about it. And no matter what he tries, he really hasn't got the ability to fix things. So I think that's the overall impression, which many Tory MPs really wouldn't have liked today.